recreationally years. He's also spent time making trip reports about his collected journalism efforts in poetry, music, and other creative arts while under the influence of plant and chemical entheogens. Dustin follows the Vedic tradition, mixing the sister sciences of classic yoga with herbology and plant medicines, also general holistic living through Ayurveda. He lives in Ajax, Ontario, pretty close to me and also close to Toronto. You can catch him on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram. I'll make sure all of that information is below. Without further ado, though, let's get this show on the road.
You're listening to the Pace Radio Network here at paceradio.net.
The views expressed by the individuals during this broadcast are their own opinions, and they may not be the same as those of their group or other organizations they may be involved with.
Hello, you beautiful souls, and welcome back to the Integration Station. I'm Naturally Ashley, your host, with a wonderful friend here, Dustin. And Dustin's got so much to share with us today. Like, you guys, normally when I take bullet points for this stuff, it's like there's a couple main topics. But when I was going through everything with Dustin and just our conversations over the past years, you know, I really wanted to bring it all together, and all of those kind of mini conversations we've had over this time too, Dustin. I feel like it's all going to be really valuable here to share with our listeners here today. So without further ado, I'd just like to pass it on to you, and you can start sharing your story and some of the medicines that you've worked with, what inspired you to get into them, and what you've kind of been doing with through the integration process as well.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Ashley. And I should tell you, I really appreciate you making the space for me, as well as all these other neuronauts and psychonauts and cosmonauts that are exploring psychedelics. But just in general, you're such a good integration person. I know you're into holistic health and healing. You have a ring around all the things, and I appreciate you making the space for people like me. You and I have been just talking for quite a little while, and I'm glad to actually really, have a sit down and for us to just do this sort of thing. Yeah. Now, my name is Dustin Cormier. I'm very glad to be here on this channel today and on this podcast. I am somebody who has been doing, in the nature of psychedelics. I've been doing psychedelics for about, it's 2022. So I've been doing it for about 12 years, I'd say. I was smoking cannabis just a bit earlier than 2010. I finished high school around 2009. I'm born 1991, rather. So I finished high school around 2009. In high school, I wasn't one who would smoke too much pot or anything, but I did a little bit occasionally. I was really quite the good boy in school, but I was somebody who wanted to be a good boy internally, but also be capable of being rock and roll, kind of hanging out with friends and partying and, sort of drinking and sort of having fun with everybody, but ultimately holding myself to some kind of what I would call spiritual standard throughout my whole life. It kind of came from, I think that some people are just called to this holistic sort of consciousness. I'm an astrologer, and I often do think that, while, people can be born in the same family, the same generation, two brothers can be born a year apart, and the circumstances are so similar, but their internal life can be so incredibly richly different. What it is that makes that happen, whether it's just a combination of the gene codes coming from the mother and the father, whether it's a past life thing, these are all things that I am very interested in. I often say that amongst mystical people, I have a scientific turn of mind, and amongst scientific people, I have a mystical turn of mind. I really try to hold the space for both. And throughout high school, I was really kind of just a general philosophical stoner guy. I loved the idea of I had my long hair just like this. And I loved the archetype of the philosophical hippie. I would just smoke my weed and just, everyone's trying too hard, man. I wanted to bring that philosophical hippie mindset even while I was in high school. And I've changed a lot, although a lot of that is similar. Once I got out of high school, I started, kind of playing around with yoga because I wanted to get in good shape. And so I read a yoga book. It was a very brass, like physical yoga type stuff. And they wanted to just get into like what's the Western fad of hatha yoga, of postures and doing breath, without much philosophical, deeper Vedic content. I've since become very much steeped in Vedanta and ancient Indian schools of mysticism and as science and thought. But at the time, I was just doing postures and breathing, just you can appreciate my look. But I read little snippets in the yoga literature of there being more than just stretching and exercising for its own sake. And after high school, there was a prompt, of course, like there was for all of us, to go to school, find some kind of academic path that will make our parents proud, get the money, a little bit of the family coffers, some kind of money, so I can be a real good boy and do what is the typical regarded proper thing in society at the time. And I didn't do that. For whatever reason, I felt I felt very rooted in the hippies. So what I started to do is, at the time, me and my dad and my brother were flipping houses, which worked really well for me. We flipped some houses. You buy a house for $100,000, you put $15,000 into it, and then you sell it for $150,000. And you get that big extra profit, and then you take the extra money, put it on another more expensive house, and we got that ball rolling for a while so that me and my brother could split on a house with a little bit of a mortgage, and we've since paid it off, which was a very good blessing for us. It's just the way it is these days in the material world. It is a blessing to have that kind of, like my father who worked so hard to allow us to have that kind of thing. I have to always say it because so much of the psychedelic exploration that I've done, I've been able to do because I've kind of had the privilege of a family dynasty that has allowed me to have that little bit of a leg up in my financial life. I have to give that caveat because there's so many people who are trying to explore psychedelics, who are trying to explore yoga and trying to do the reading that I did at that time, but who have to go and work 2 jobs 6 days a week and they come home and they're exhausted. So this is something that I have to tell to every audience, or at least I feel compelled to, so people could see it in context. Now at this time, while I was just out of high school, me and my dad and brother were flipping houses, and I had free time. And I didn't want to, I think my dad wanted me to learn how to do the house thing, to flip a house, to do construction, right? Electrical, plumbing, wiring, framing. And I did a little bit of that, which was actually pretty sweet. But I would get home, I'd smoke a bit of weed and have a coffee, and I'd be digging into psychedelic literature. I had an instinctive feeling that this is what I wanted to do with my consciousness, and the literature was really what started my journey into psychedelics. I became very interested in it, although I should say there was something that really prompted all of this for me. What it was, I got interested in the literature. That was a big part of it, but part of the reason why I got interested in the literature was while I was still in high school, I think it was around grade 11 or grade 12, my brother is a year older than me. I'm born in the year of the goat, 1991. He's born in the year of the horse, 1990. And so my brother is a year older than me. He's the big brother. And he was going through a real tough time while I was still in high school. He didn't finish high school in the system. My mother helped him to get his credentials so that he'd eventually go, and he's in the union now. He's actually doing very good, the construction union. But at the time, he was having a really hard go. He was into certain crowds that are tough, really kind of, violent sort of music, and doing lots of drugs. In particular, he had really gotten into MDMA, even MDMA, ecstasy, which is like the 90s fad of ecstasy, which had like a bit of some... Right. It had a bit of meth in it, and it had a little bit of heroin in it, and it's the best drug in the world.
It was at the time.
Yeah, that's why you shouldn't do it. Because your serotonin goes, really hard. And the only way to get out of the terrible, terrible funk of lack of serotonin that comes from that is to do more. My brother was stuck in that loop. And at the time, he had bad acne. And so he was on an acne medication called Accutane, which apparently can cause mental issues. And like people take it and they get suicidal, but their face loses its acne. So it's a thing like this, which I don't know. There's got to be more. You would know that there's much more better holistic ways to deal with acne that's not going to mess up with your spinal fluid in that way.
Yeah.
Right? So this is where he was. He was on this medication, really messed up on ecstasy. And so at some point, he got it in his head that he wanted to kill himself. And how he decided to do it was to eat 15 grams of psychedelic mushrooms. And that's a whole story in itself. I was there in the basement. He's given me permission to tell this story because he thinks it's an important one, and it's an important part of my story. And it's helped him. In the end, it turned out very well for him, as so many people who do psychedelics know. He died, but whatever it was that died was what he was before that. And he came out of that thing a whole new person. It's a wild story. He was in the basement. It's just a funny story to tell. He was eating them just like potato chips, and he's sitting in the basement. From my perspective, what happened is that he's sitting in front of his TV screen, and it's white noise, the white cable static, and he was sitting in front of the TV for like 3 or 4 hours, just staring at it like this. I'm on my computer, and I'm not really as into drugs other than occasional pot, so I'm looking at him, and I'm kind of like, he seems okay. So I think everything's all good here. At some point, he came away from the TV and said, well, I just had an important conversation with God. And I was like, great, man. And he really turned into beast mode after that. He started hallucinating that he was having sex on the floor naked. Having the thing come out on himself. He really had a crazy experience there, and he was yelling, and he started to yell and scream, and it was at that point that I couldn't really, I wanted him to have it. Didn't want him to explode because he was exploding, and I also didn't want my parents to know, because me and my brother lived in the basement of my mom's place at this time, and she lived upstairs. She heard it, came down, called my dad, and they were like, what the fuck? And I was like, he ate a lot of mushrooms, and a lot, I think. I'm pretty sure. I don't know how much 15 grams is at the time. Now I know that it's 3 times the amount of what people typically call a heroic dose. Ambulance came, they checked his heart. He was having heart palpitations because he was so high. They did something to sober him up, like coal or something like that, and it flushed it through his system. And after that, he came down. He was in, they called an ambulance, and that was a tough experience for him, but by the end of it, he came out of it, and he's like, oh my God, I'm just glad that I'm alive. It turned out pretty good for him, despite all things considered. So, crazy story for sure. After that experience, my brother turned a whole new leaf in his life. He wanted to become a different person. He killed that angry, seeking thing that he was at that time, and he became very open. I could tell that there was like a neuroplasticity that he developed. And after my experience of seeing him become a very different, more open person. He's more open to the positive side of like spirituality, but not like zealous. You know, he wasn't like somebody who was like a Bible thumper after this, but he had an idea of God. He had an idea, you know, what happened in his trip when he was in front of the TV is that he was in the clouds and he saw a bearded anthropomorphic male figure banging a chick, banging a woman, having sex with somebody, and God and this girl are doing the thing, and they looked over and God says, Sean, you're not supposed to be here yet. And God said, or Sean looked at God, and Sean said, yeah, I took the shortcut, and I decided life sucked, and that seemed to be the case. And God said, well, okay, I mean, you can stay here if you want. It's going to mean that you're going to let go of everything that you've built, all the people that you love, all the people that you care about at home. And my brother had a flash and said, you know what? Now that I know this is all here, this is all cool, I'm going to go back and I'm going to remember that there is something beyond this life. I'm going to try to live the life that I had in the best way possible. It's a very mystical sort of experience and weird and abstract, and not everybody who's atheistic minded is going to rev with that, which I understand. Even for me, it's the anthropomorphized male figure of God I'm not totally with, but he had an experience of something on the other side of life, and it made him want to live his actual life the best that he could. So for me, having seen that transformation in him, he stopped doing like the drugs that he was doing, still occasionally doing some, but he didn't seem like to have the existential, like, I'm going to die before I'm 27 type of consciousness. This is just before I finished high school. Then I finished high school, I started getting into yoga, and I started getting into psychedelic literature because I could see what people were talking about in psychedelic literature had happened to my brother. I got this, as usual, the younger brother lets the big brother go and have the hard experience, and I got to watch the whole thing without necessarily jumping into it myself. Now, there was at some point where I was pretty spooked about the idea of psychedelics in general, because I wanted to be a good boy and I wanted to be in control of myself, and I thought that doing drugs would put me in a state of lack of control wherein I couldn't be the good boy. And I'm a dude, you know, like I was afraid that like I would like get super high and then like go and like, I don't know, like if the boundaries are all gone, like what am I going to go and tell my girlfriends that like I want to have like sex with them right away or something like that? Like I was afraid that I would be mean. I was afraid that doing something like this would cause me to be out of control in a way that's not ultimately good. But as I read the psychedelic literature, I started getting tuned into the thought that you can do a small amount, explore the unconscious, explore this, what we call this dissolution of self-control, in a slow way, in a comfortable way, that ultimately you don't have to just take a heroic dose right away and get into that experience. And of course, as I started to take small amounts of psychedelics, I found out that you don't really lose. I mean, my brother lost all control, and you can get to that place with psychedelics. But by the time you start moving into that place, you know, especially if you're doing like 6 grams of mushrooms, you're probably too high to even think about like doing a lot of that kind of stuff. Depends on the person. But in my experience, I never lost my sense of self or my sense of rightness as I started exploring with psychedelics. It was very different from what I imagined it would be. Much safer, much more insightful, It was really the internal experience, less so of me being in the body of a horny teenager or, like a horny 18-year-old. That was there. That was part of it. But I took really from psychedelics, helped me integrate the fact that I was a sexual human being. And it would be good for me to have relationship experiences with people that were meaningful and that were purposeful and that meant something to my soul. Because at the time, this whole good boy thing amounted at some level to me, even with girls, I was very nervous, and I didn't want to push myself onto a girl for a long time. I felt like by asking a girl to kind of hang out with me, or not hang out with me, but to go out with me and to, be interested in getting close and having a heart-to-heart connection, I could do that all at a friendship level. But getting any further than that was always tough for me, for whatever reason. It's probably, I think, my parents at some level. I think they divorced when I was in grade 2, and my mother always told me, that you got to be good to girls. You don't want to push yourself onto girls. I was a mama's boy, really. And so I think I lost some of that male machismo. I was kind of intimidated by my father and by the male archetype in general. Eventually, once I started exploring psychedelics, I got into me being somewhat of a non-binary person. I would say my pronouns are he/they. I'm a guy. I present as a guy, but I have a lot of feminine consciousness inside of me. And this is part of the intimidation that I felt with the opposite sex when I was younger. I felt like a girl that could relate with them at the girl level, but when it came to me being a dude and doing that thing, it was intimidating for me. And as I started doing psychedelics, I started integrating the male, 18-year-old side of myself without losing the caring feminine desire to connect at the emotional and heart level. I started to fuse them together. Although there was also a period where I just went and kind of just partied and, looked for people to just have a physical, sensual connection with as well. There was even, I went through, I'm bisexual myself. I've explored just hanging out with guys and just enjoying making fire with the 2 sticks just for its own sake. And it being still heartfelt, but not always that heartfelt. It's more just to have a rock and roll sensual experience. I went through a lot of that and found out that wasn't quite really what I'm ultimately interested in either. But no judgment to those who are, because I've been exploring taboos, as I'm a very Scorpio person. In astrology, I have the Sun and Pluto and Mars all in Scorpio, and I'm a Leo rising. So I'm the taboo theme of Scorpio was something that was very much in my consciousness. And psychedelics were part of where this is at. Psychedelics was an exploration of these taboos for me. But ultimately, as I went through and explored the literature of psychedelics, early again, after high school, I had my first experience was just hanging out with some friends. I took a little bit of mushrooms, probably about 1 gram and a bit, and everyone was kind of just hanging out and laughing and kind of having that ecstatic giggle. And I would too, but there was one moment when I had like an out-of-body experience. I looked all around in the room where everybody was, and I felt like I could see myself almost as if in a dream. I could see my furry head from above and everyone around me. And I had this just psychic experience of seeing that. And it was for about like 10 or 15 seconds. And then I came to. And I thought that by doing that, I got this experience that there is more to myself than my physical body. I could see myself from up there. It's as if there was an etheric strand of awareness that was looking at the room from above. From that point on, I got this intuition that there's more to life than the physical, and that there's more to psychedelics than just having a laugh and having a sensual experience. and having this kind of, party consciousness. I was very deeply affected by that. And it was that led me to slowly becoming someone who's interested in having larger experiences with larger doses and dissolving a lot of the dead weight that was hanging on me from being a teenager, even especially connecting with girls. Psychedelics really helped me to see myself in context in that regard, where I started hanging with people. We would all kind of do psychedelics together, and we would all just have these sorts of experiences of heartfelt connection. Didn't need to go anywhere, didn't necessarily need to be anything sexual. It was just this pure, open-hearted openness with people that I started to just absolutely love. So, from there, I could probably just talk about a few psychedelic experiences I had that really started to jumpstart me, where I had the experiences similar to what my brother had, at least one.
Do you mind, though, Dustin, if we cut to commercial break real quick, and when we come back, we'll dive into some of these, some of your own personal experiences. But thank you so much for everything so far. There's so much power in storytelling, and I'm so grateful to you and your brother for allowing this share today. I know it's going to resonate with many. So yeah, we'll cut to commercial right now.
Sounds good.
Happy back to dive into some of your own personal experiences with multiple different medicines, which one of them I know is Hawaiian WoodRose. So this is what we haven't talked about much. I know you're going to add a lot of value there. So.
I can't wait to talk about it, Ashley.
We'll be right back.
You're listening to the Pace Radio Network here at paceradio.net.
When you think of the number of unique products developed in the fields, kitchens, and labs at Legacy 420, it's hard to think that one stands out above the rest. But tell that to the thousands of people who have tried this amazing breakthrough product.
This is our Sacred Salve. This is actually our extra strength. It comes in 5 different strengths. It's all natural, all organic. It typically works within 10 to 15 minutes of putting it on. It's good for arthritis, it's good for inflammation, any kind of pain. We're very proud of it.
Sacred Salve, so easy to apply, along with soothing relief. To select a strength that's right for you, come in and talk to your trusted partner. Legacy 420 out on your road.
Pace Radio Network, by patients, for patients, and for those who want to know.
BMA Hydroponics has everything you need to succeed. Visit our Hydroponics Superstore at 404 Maitland Drive in Belleville, and we'll show you how to grow your own quality cannabis for pennies per gram. We're open Mondays, Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Saturdays from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. and Thursdays and Fridays from 10 a.m. to 7 p.m. Call 613-967-9888. BMA Hydroponics. It's worth the drive. The only way to go.
CP operates medicinal cannabis signing clinic. If you want to grow your own medicinal cannabis and are located anywhere in Canada, then I'd like to suggest that you give them a call. They can be reached at 1-613-967-9888. That's 1-613-967-9888, and grow on with CP.
Let's share PACE everywhere. That way it can help create peace. People everywhere advocating cannabis education.
Enjoy the buzz of legalization with Campbellford Lifestyle Shop. From lights to plant nutrients, books, consumption accessories, and more, we've got all your basics to grow or consume cannabis. Visit our info center or take a look at our piercing services and body jewelry, now available in-store through Campbellford Lifestyle Shop, 17 Bridge Street West, Campbellford.
You're listening to the Pace Radio Network here at paceradio.net.
All right, welcome back, you beautiful souls. We're back with Dustin here to talk about some of his psychedelic experiences.
I'm so excited to be here, Ashley. And thank you again, Ashley, for making the space for me to talk about this stuff.
My pleasure, honestly.
It's awesome. I'm enjoying it a lot. Now, I've been doing, as I said, since, it's for about 12 years I've been really getting into psychedelics, and something I'm interested in doing right now. You've caught me just as I'm making a name transition on my psychedelic channel. I think I'm going to start calling it Psychedelic Yoga Chronicles. I used to call it How to Rock Spirit. But I'm changing it so that my main interest on a lot of what I'm doing is psychedelic yoga and even the chronicling part. I've been doing almost like Erowid style trip reports. Do you know the site Erowid?
Yeah. It's a really great one too, you guys, to look up just for your own psychedelic research. Is this where you were getting a lot of your psychedelic literature from in the past? I
would say it's certainly where I got a lot of my knowledge from. As well, what I love about Erowid is that there's a personal touch to it, because Erowid is a forum thread style used to be underground website where people can come on and submit their personally written and typed up psychedelic experiences using a certain dose of psychedelics. We've got people going on there talking about having 7-gram mushroom trips, people talking about having, however many Hawaiian baby WoodRose seeds just by themselves. And then there's also combined doses, where people just say, what's your coolest combined dose story? You take a hit of acid, 2 grams of mushrooms, 5 Hawaiian baby WoodRose, see where it goes. That's my favorite, by the way. That would be my favorite dose. Hit of acid, 2 to 3 grams of mushrooms, usually more, probably about like 4. And then about 4 Hawaiian baby WoodRose. It's very common for all my trips that I did throughout the 2010s decade. And I'm going to be writing a book, and it's going to be going by the same name. So far, it's pretty still in the roots of writing this book. It's going to be called Psychedelic Yoga Chronicles, WoodRose and Other Allies. It's going to be the subtitle.
It's very niche. You are a very niche guy. I really do admire that, because it takes a lot of courage to, find, we can generalize so many things, but you're finding these special spaces to really add value. And
Thank you, Ashley. Thank you for saying that, because that's something that I'm really digging for, especially with this book and with what I'm starting to unfold as a public personality talking about psychedelics. I've been interested in contributing to psychedelic consciousness and literature for all this time. It's really today's days that this is becoming a much more acceptable thing. I just watched the movie Dosed 2 in Toronto.
How was that?
It was wonderful. It's heavy. But it's doing what I would consider to be the basic groundwork for getting psychedelics out there. Just like with cannabis, because it was healing people, this is a movie describing the experiences of a woman named Lori who got cancer. And she was having, there's a word for it, it's like end-of-life anxiety. And she was just scared heckless about, the nervousness she had about dying and about the cancer and everything. She got a permission from the government to try medicinal mushrooms with a trained doctor. The trained doctor had an assistant who held the hand of Lori. Lori did 3 grams of mushrooms, put on a little simple headphone set with just some nice classical music, put on a band around her eyes, and the assistant held her hand as she went through a 3-gram mushroom experience. And after this experience, even though she was still dying, the cancer was still coming through for her. There was no for sure way that they were going to be able to heal the cancer. She still got to live the last of her life, or what seemed to be the last of her life, in a happy, fulfilling way with her family and loving them. Ultimately, as she let go of the anxiety, the cancer actually helped to get out of remission, and it started to actually heal. But that was a combination of a few things. She got into holism, after this. And ultimately, I believe she's still alive. So it's an incredible story. Dosed 2 is a good movie that I recommend. And this bottom line medicinal framework is probably what's going to prompt psychedelic mushrooms to be considered as a good, healthy clinical standard for doing what psychedelics do. At first, it's going to be for people who have trauma and who have these sorts of things. But eventually, it could be very well something where somebody like me, who, I haven't had any terrible traumas in my life. Everybody's got their shadow. Everybody's got their gunk, and I've got my share of gunk. But for me, I've been doing psychedelics medicinally as well as I would say recreationally. I think it's going to be medicinal for anybody who takes it, even if they've never had a problem in their life. So for me, I'm not a medical professional. I'm not somebody who has any credentials really in any, academic regard. I'm somebody who's really read a lot of psychedelic literature, has been reading psychedelic literature as well as yogic literature for like 10 years plus. I've got a whole bunch of books that I've read, and this is what's guiding me to be more of a poet philosopher in the psychedelic sphere. And this is where I come from when I talk about all my stuff. Now, with my book, this is kind of this is the angle I'm coming from, is a poet philosopher very steeped in the science of yoga and self-realization. I'm very into psychology, and I try to ground myself in the sort of language of psychology as much as possible, because I think that's my turn of mind, as I said.
And it's more recognized, the spiritual stuff. I think there is still a stigma on it, like this is woohoo or it's witchcraft, even like Fantastic Fungi, that movie's in the occult section. It's not in the health section.
Right, totally, which is wild. Yeah, I know. Paul Stamets is great.
He is.
He is dancing on this line because he can wax poetic, but he's ultimately expressing the science of the neuroplasticity that people talk about with psychedelics, overcoming the default mode network, which is the way that we are used to operating, that we've been used to operating all our lives. Psychedelics can trip that so that we can be compelled to explore who and what we might be beyond our typical behavior. This is all wonderful and incredible stuff. Now, sorry, Dustin. Oh, it's okay, Ashley. Go ahead.
I do a lot of teachings through the McKenna Academy, and whenever Paul Stamets is there, no matter because he's kind of like you in the sense that he didn't have a lot of like educational background. Mm-hmm. Everything is from his own personal experience and exploration and his own teachings. And no matter how intelligent he is, no matter how much like people are putting him on a pedestal when it comes to mycology and and psychedelics, whenever he's at one of these events or anything, he is asking questions to everybody. Like he's so curious. That's like my favorite thing.
Oh, that's sweet.
I just wanted to share that because now that you brought him up.
For sure, he's a sweetheart, and I remind myself a lot of him. I take a lot after Paul Stamets, I think, in a lot of ways. And, these poet philosopher types are going to be important, just as the people who have scientific background and academic education are also important as well. The marriage of these two is always a classic thing, just like it was in the psychedelic 60s, because ultimately the science people are like the headquarters on the ground who are ultimately going to be making dedicated statistical research and fact-based clinical research that is going to allow people to see objectively, not subjectively, but objectively, that psychedelics are helping people get through addictions, helping them deal with trauma, and to help having these numbers that are going to make people understand the importance of these things. Poets and philosophers like Paul Stamets and I are going to be the people who say, where can we go once we've established the basic framework for the medicinal side of psychedelics? How can this be applied to any person in order to expand their consciousness and to expand the way that they perceive and understand themselves in the context of the reality and the life that they're living? As just a general, holistic counseling agent, a catalyst for a counselor, which I think is its own special thing. Although I would say that I'm somebody who is niche in the sense that I'll go out and do a bunch of psychedelics on the beach where anyone can come along and see me squirming around and doing my Shakti spider, just letting the energy come through my spine, and think that I'm a heroin addict just like really wigging out, and like somebody could see me doing that and think that. I'm the type of person who has always kind of done this because psychedelics are not yet at the place where we can do them clinically in a safe environment with a professional. Although even when that happens...
I was going to say, I don't even believe that that's the way to do it. More like what you're saying, that's
right.
Natural. That's what our ancestors were doing. They weren't sitting there with earphones because earphones weren't invented.
Right.
They didn't have music playing in their ear or anything. They were making that themselves. One of the things that Terrence and Dennis McKenna did was they noticed that people on psychedelics, DMT, psilocybin, they were hearing the same sounds.
Right.
Where are you hearing the same sounds? Now they're doing this new research into people are seeing the same entities and going to the same dimension. And this is starting to be scientifically proven now that, this is a very common theme.
Totally. The telepathy in ayahuasca especially can really bring those kinds of experiences. I believe that's why they had the idea to call it telepathy, is because people would have a similar experience of like an entity. It's right here. Look, I can put my hand through it. And the other person's looking and saying, yes, I see that one space in physical space that you're putting your hand through has some kind of entity, some kind of gaseous thing that I also see. It's amazing that ayahuasca could do these kinds of things. And to be fair, I think that the whole clinical in a room with the headphones thing is going to be an important start and will always, I think, be there for those who want that very safe experience. And I also know that there's always going to be people like me who know how to find mushrooms and go to the beach and do it without that. So, the balance, having both is kind of where I'm at. Yeah. It's really nice to know that I can do that. Ultimately, there will be people, I think, because I've been doing that for a long time, and I started off very slow, doing small increments of psychedelics before I could go out into a beach in public and wig out and not be afraid that I would have a bad confrontation or interaction with somebody. If I was to get we're in Canada. I'm not that close to Toronto. I'm Whitby, Ajax, right? So I've never been mugged or anything like that, which I imagine would be a very difficult experience if I was that high. So these kinds of things you have to be aware of when you're dealing with what I'm doing. I've never had a problem, and I've always, I've built myself slowly to be able to have these kinds of experiences while still keeping 10. Still being aware of who's around me, what could happen, and ultimately I'm never paranoid, especially because I do a lot of yoga. When I'm out there on psychedelics, it purges me so that I feel very clear-minded, even though I'm still having the euphoria experience. So when I first started getting into doing psychedelics myself, after seeing the experience with my brother, I started doing little bits of psychedelics. I had that out-of-body experience. And at some point, I got the idea that I wanted to go and find, because mushrooms were kind of hard to find for me at the time. Now they're super easy. There are places where you can get them online in Canada.
Yeah. You can grow yourself, get shipped right to your house.
Bingo, right? And they're great, So that's what I've been rolling with. But when I first started getting into these psychedelics, I loved the idea of being like an amateur botanist, someone who could really dig into the chemistry, because I took chemistry in high school and I had a pretty good idea of it. I wasn't great at it, but I took academic chemistry because I wanted to. It was just something I wanted to do. And having gone into chemistry, I started getting into the idea of especially making extracts. So something I did at some point throughout my psychedelic research, I was reading guys like Richard Schultes, who did a lot of work identifying botanical psychedelics in the Amazon rainforest in like the 30s and 40s and 50s. And one of the things I came across was this Hawaiian baby WoodRose, is what they called it. It's called the elephant creeper. The Latin name that is typically used is Rivea corymbosa. It's not the same as morning glory, but it's the same chemical molecular situation. It's basically LSD is strictly LSD. It's a pure chemical, and it doesn't have any. There's not a spectrum of LSD, but I believe, as I understand it, there are things called lysergic acid amines. That's LSA. And LSA is a bit more like THC. We know with THC, there's 10,000 different types of THC on the spectrum from sativa to indica. LSA is a little bit like the subtle particles that are inside of the Hawaiian baby WoodRose seeds in particular, as well as morning glory. LSA is not like a pure singular chemical molecule like LSD is. It's part of why LSD is so great, but LSA has its own charm. And I had heard about them. A lot of people use them recreationally in different places. Apparently they're popular in Australia right now. The strongest ones come from Hawaii, and that if they're well cultivated and cultivated with true care, they will contain the chemical element of LSA that gets you high in the way that Hawaiian baby WoodRose does. It's similar to acid in my experience, but it is kind of, as I experience it, it's a bridge between acid and mushrooms, and it's really its own thing. Now, what I first did, basically, I got really lucky somehow. I was looking through different forums and different things, and there happened to be some website that was selling 1,000 Hawaiian baby WoodRose seeds for not that much money. Like, I think it was like $200. And they were from Hawaii, they were organic, and they were quite potent. And I've been nursing that bag ever since. That was like 2011, and I still have that bag of seeds in my fridge, and I'll still break them up and use that same batch that I got, and it's just as strong as it was when I first got them.
Yeah, a lot of psychedelics do really last a long time if you can take care of this stuff. You know, it sometimes lasts very long time. Yeah, I'm thinking about some of the stuff in my apothecary. I'm like, how old is that?
And they're still good, man. You know, especially these little seeds. You just put them in the fridge and they're just as good.
Yeah.
I would like to even grow some Hawaiian baby WoodRose eventually, because, you know, growing them helps you to get into the consciousness of the soul of the seed, which is something I'm going to talk about eventually. This is part of my book that I've been wanting to talk about. A lot of the times I just talk with regard to psychedelics and things. I do try to speak at a chemical and molecular place because, again, I want people to kind of take me seriously. There are certain podcasts I'll go on, like yours, Ashley, where I talk about the very strange idea. This is part of what I'm breaking into in my book. It's the idea, you know, how I would try to frame it is that I've been developing on my idea of transpersonal psychology, which is essentially that the idea that the human personality has agencies of consciousness within it, which are more than just what we would typically abide as the self. There's the self that is Dustin Cormier, but when I ingest the Hawaiian baby WoodRose seeds, there appears to be invoked within me a psychic agency of an entity. It seems to me that there is something that's speaking through me. And when I write in my journals, I can see the presence of it. And I've had experiences where I've started saying, okay, who are you? And it would speak through my pen. Where I'm at now, whenever I have a psychedelic Hawaiian baby WoodRose trip, I just recently did on my birthday, November 8th.
The same as my brother.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow, small world.
Yes.
Awesome. He's a Scorpio like me.
Yes.
I had an experience on my birthday. It was during the full moon lunar eclipse, which just happened to line up with my birthday, which was amazing. I took what I've been doing now is I'll take the Hawaiian baby WoodRose just by itself. I took 2 seeds, which is all I needed. This is kind of what I'm playing with these days, but occasionally I'll take more. But 2 is enough to give me the consciousness of Hawaiian baby WoodRose. From there, it's really more about me doing yoga to bring out the best of what the seed has to give me. I do the seeds, and I'm gonna have to. There's so much I'd like to talk about with these seeds. Essentially, there's a purge experience that they kind of invoke, and I'll often do yoga. I'll do some kind of breath work and breath practice to clear myself, to clear my nadis of my body, the channels of energy from the top of the head to the toes and the fingers and everything. I do what's called Kriya Yoga, is the way that I've been dealing with this. And these seeds have almost prompted me to explore meditation and yoga and ways of gripping some kind of discipline that is useful for the wild, wiggly, wild woman consciousness that comes through with the Hawaiian baby WoodRose in particular. Mushrooms that have done this for me too, and this is part of just my body, but part of who I am is somebody who likes to do yoga, who likes to clean out my energy body, because I knew when I would do these Hawaiian baby WoodRose, I would become hyper attuned to the flow of the energy through my body. And if it wasn't flowing well, or if I didn't do some kind of purgative yoga experience, the Hawaiian baby WoodRose would cause stress. The Hawaiian baby WoodRose would make me feel gross, like I am not cleaned out, and like a caring mother spanking my ass with a wooden spoon. The Hawaiian baby WoodRose would make me feel anxious and, not all that good if I wasn't living a well-disciplined, regulated life with circadian rhythms that are healthy. I've gotten into Ayurveda. I've gotten into waking up at a certain time, even having a nap throughout the day at some point, ideally if I can make time for it, eating healthy sattvic foods that are full of rich prana in the morning, and then having a bigger meal around lunch, and then not having a huge meal at dinner, not clogging my guts with peanut butter and jam like I did in those days. And the Hawaiian baby WoodRose pushed me to have a more holistic lifestyle, because if I didn't, the Hawaiian baby WoodRose would make me anxious. Hawaiian baby WoodRose is very specific in this way. If you're not a holistic person, and if you don't have grounding outside of the Hawaiian baby WoodRose experience, it will make you anxious that you don't have that. This is why I have to make this caveat with these very special seeds, is they are a teacher, and they kind of are. When I first got into them, I'm the only person that I know that I've experimented with Hawaiian baby WoodRose as much as I have. I've always been called to them. There are things in my astrology chart that convey that I would be an herbologist of this sort and exploring plant entities in this way. And the more I've gotten in tune with it over time, I've done a few experiments, but when I had my recent trip, I decided to put a name on her. I call her Lucille. Lucille is this consciousness that comes through me and speaks through me when I do these Hawaiian baby WoodRose, and I'm writing in my book as a channel for Lucille. And in my book, what you see me writing, and I say, you know, I want everybody to know that Dustin Cormier is a vessel for my voice, and everything in this book is going to come through the stained glass window of Dustin's ego. But I am in there. And this is how Lucille is speaking objectively through me in this way. And then what I do in the book is I describe my life and a lot of the things that we've been talking about. And I'm also talking about how I believe that there was a period when the Christian ministry of, you know, the white European people were really against aliliquy. And the aliliquy is the morning glory seeds. Then with morning glory,
also psychoactive for anybody who's unfamiliar.
You got it. Thank you, Ashley. You're right. And it's the same. It's LSA. And the morning glory seeds, you have to take like I don't know. I shouldn't. You know, do your research if anybody is interested in doing these. But you need to take much more. I think it's like 60 to 100 or more in order to get an experience similar to Hawaiian baby WoodRose, where you would only take 4 or 5 Hawaiian baby WoodRose seeds to get that effect. And it can
still make you sick. Like, it is still an ordeal medicine because it can be very purgative. And mushrooms, you don't often purge, but you can still get that like uneasy feeling in your stomach, and you might feel like you want to throw up, or you might feel like you're dying.
Right.
But with some of these other more purgative ones, it really is more of an ordeal. There's something coming in already.
That's my cat. It's either a spirit, but no, it's my cat.
Your dad's spirit.
I'm sure he's gonna jump. Yeah, he's gonna make a mess here. I love this guy, but he is always getting in my way. Say hello, buddy. Ooh, hello. I do this all the time on my channel. His name's Wally. I think my audience on my YouTube channel has seen him many times at this point. So, yes, these are definitely, you know, different from mushrooms. These Hawaiian baby WoodRose are different from mushrooms. And what's interesting to me is that I use mushrooms or acid, but ideally mushrooms, as a catalyst. It's almost like mushrooms wipe your ego or your natural default mode network clean. And when you do mushrooms, it allows the elasticity and space for the Hawaiian baby WoodRose seeds to come through and do their work. Because if you do like 5 Hawaiian baby WoodRose seeds by themselves, you won't really get a euphoric psychedelic experience. You just have a rather agitated, almost anxious experience by themselves. Although, you know, you get like a lot of the sort of purgative experiences of a lot of psychedelics without a euphoria. This is Hawaiian baby WoodRose. It does give you a euphoria, but it's usually if you combine it with a base plate pure catalyst like LSD or mushrooms, and then especially if you do some kind of yoga, then Hawaiian baby WoodRose, yoga as well as some kind of meditation that grounds you, and especially it's the most sensual drug. It opens you up to the feeling of the sand against your skin. Mushrooms do that as well, but Hawaiian baby WoodRose adds an element that's just different from everything. And what I would say about mushrooms and acid is that they really open you up to what I would call, like, this is the language I'm using in my book. In yoga, we talk about the difference between Purusha and Prakriti. Purusha is like the spirit or the soul of the person, and mushrooms and acid are conducive to that. Prakriti is really something that is like the pagan sense of the transpersonal agency that Western Christians have considered to be like a demonism. And this is why these seeds have been literally demonized throughout the medieval era and these sorts of things. And there's so much I want to talk about with regards to all this stuff. Now, Ashley, do you want to, I guess you're going to let me know when we feel like taking a commercial break, eh?
Yeah, we're about there now.
Okay.
So let's just do it now, and then we'll come back and finish up here. I guess you saw the timer, eh?
Yep. And now I'm looking at the time too, so it makes sense that we would have a break soon. So we'll do that, and I'll see you in just a little moment.
Yeah.
You're listening to the Pace Radio Network here at paceradio.net.
Cannabis edibles are an effective way to manage pain and other ailments, especially when you deal with your trusted partner, Legacy 420, in Tyendinaga Mohawk territory. You see, we lab test every product on site to ensure proper dosage every time, which is critical when consuming cannabis edibles. All Legacy 420 edibles are made by our classically trained baker and chocolatier, and we also have super tasty vegan options.
Our baker has been in the industry for 25 years. She's also a chocolatier. Everything from savory to sweet, your chocolate bars, brownies, butter tarts, you name it, we make it.
Talk to our knowledgeable Cannatex about our incredible variety available. Give your trusted partners a call. Legacy 420 out on your road.
In February of 2022, the Victoria Cannabis Buyers Club and Ted Smith were fined $6.5 million. This for helping 8,500 patients with access to medical cannabis. In our interview with Ted, he spoke to us about how people can donate to help in an upcoming court challenge. And here is part of that interview. From what I've seen lately, I believe that you've got something that you're trying to do as far as fundraising to deal with this next court challenge.
For now, people can write checks directly to Jack Lloyd Law Corporation or send e-transfers to savethebcbc@gmail.com. I guess those are the two easiest ways for people to help right now.
Enjoy the buzz of legalization with Campbellford Lifestyle Shop. From lights to plant nutrients, books, consumption accessories, and more, we've got all your basics to grow or consume cannabis. Visit our info center or take a look at our piercing services and body jewelry, now available in-store through Campbellford Lifestyle Shop, 17 Bridge Street West, Campbellford.
Growing your own cannabis is easier than you think. Whether you're growing for recreational or medical purposes, BMA Hydroponics has everything you need to succeed. From the standard 4-plant recreational systems to the latest cutting-edge hydroponic equipment, BMA can customize your package and do it at discount prices. Visit BMA Hydroponics at 404 Maitland Drive in Belleville and ask us for a free estimate. Or call 613-967-9888 and we will give you an estimate over the phone. The only way to go.
We are people advocating cannabis education here at paceradio.net.
Welcome back, everyone. We've still got Dustin here, thankfully, because, I was just telling him, in this commercial break, just how much we could continue talking about plant consciousness and just what's coming through with the channeling of psychedelics. And I know he's got a lot more to share, so I'm just gonna pass it back over. I'm so excited.
Thank you, Ashley. I love your excitement, because there's a lot of people breaking open the head and talking about this kind of stuff that's going on right now, because there's so many different types of psychedelics out there. I'm really glad to be somebody, if I have to bring any one thing to the forefront in order to talk about it as something to be explored, I'm glad to be talking about Hawaiian baby WoodRose. It has been my ally, and I feel like I'm giving back to her as much as she has given to me. Well, that would be a stretch because she's given me so much. But I am glad to be hanging out with you and talk about it, Ashley. You and me are going to probably hang out after this and just, shoot the shit about plants and plant medicines, because there's so many places to go with it.
Yeah.
And really, I'm interested. We were talking about how there are these catalyst psychedelics, which I'm considering mushrooms and acid to be. they are really this base plate flash of Satori that does the neuroplasticity that we talk about. They're really, I don't want to downgrade them by saying that they're basic. It's like it's basic in the sense that a baseball bat is basic to baseball. There's a lot more that you can do and things that you can bring to the baseball experience, but without the baseball bat, like it's basic in this positive sense. And so are mushrooms and acid. They're foundational. On top of these two, I would also consider ayahuasca to be foundational in this way. Those three are really, for me, the kind of the holy triad in a lot of ways. I went and did ayahuasca in Peru in 2017 I was there for a month. And I was living kind of on a little spot that was, hosting Western gringos like me. I went there with a few friends. We were there for a month. We had powwows, which was a huge element of things. People talk these days about how the group ceremonial method of psychedelic healing and cleansing brings things to the psychedelic experience that you can't really get by yourself. And it's so true. Although I would also say that there are things that you can get by yourself that you just can't get in a group setting. I think that both of these ways are important.
Yeah.
I think if you really want to get in tune with plant consciousness, in a lot of ways, it's very good to do them by yourself or to have a solo trip for those who are called to it. And because there are things when you're by yourself that you don't need to reflect off other people in order to dig very deeply into your own zones, not prompted by anything or anyone. Have a notebook. And I have listened to, there are times when I've listened to music on trips or Alan Watts lectures, for example.
Yep. The
things like that.
Series that they've got.
Totally. Oh, those are fun.
Yeah. Philosophers mixtape.
Yep. Classic stuff that I love, So there's even things, Timothy Leary made a record when he was in his heyday.
I still listen to it.
Do you listen to the one, eh? It's when he's talking to Ralph Metzner. Ralph. Hello, Ralph. Are you ready to die?
It might not be that one, but there's one where he's got like this new age music in the background, and it's all about the mind.
Gotcha. Okay, because I know that Timothy Leary did a few.
We'll have to swap them out.
Sure. I'd love to see what you've got too, Ashley. This one in particular, I believe it's just called the Psychedelic Experience. And he does a whole narrative where he's speaking to you, but it's funny, he's talking to Ralph Metzner, but he describes it as, anybody can take this, and they just get this name of Ralph. And Timothy Leary is guiding you through it all. And it's very psychedelic, like it's painfully psychedelic. And there's a lot of weird sounds that he adds in there. There's parts where you can hear the running footsteps, and he's like, here, come over here. No, don't go that way, come this way. And he's leading you through this whole thing. So that was something that I've listened to, that I've been very deeply affected by on my personal beloved combination of acid, mushrooms, and Hawaiian baby WoodRose. But, even eventually, that's a world I want to get into, is leading visionary trips through audio. That's, as an artist, that's been something that I want to get into. Once I do
together on that.
Sure, Ashley.
We did a set that was kind of like that, with meditations mixed with music that other people were sending us, like Amani Friend and stuff. But you're so into the music too, Rolling Stones. You can bring the rock and roll.
For sure. That's something I'm interested in, man. I gotta tell you, making because there's so much to production and music production.
Yeah.
And it often takes a lot of
editing. That's what you went to school for. So we do make a good
Groovy.
in these ways. Yeah.
Awesome. I love to hear that. And this is where, I think things are going in the world of healing in a lot of ways, because that recording of Timothy Leary has always inspired me to do something similar. On top of also just great music that I've listened to, like The End by The Doors, I listened to on acid and it blew me wide open. So, ultimately there's so many things to do on psychedelics, and there's so many psychedelics to do, and they're all going to give you a different experience of your internal superconscious and the consciousness that comes through you. There's so much to be said about the potentials for psychedelics and what it can bring. I do a lot of nonfiction writing in my book, where I'm just saying this, I'm trying to be serious and being not waxing poetic, but just telling people what I think is the useful potentials of psychedelics. And there's a lot to talk about there. When I went to Peru and did ayahuasca actually has a little bit of what I would call this entity consciousness, in similar to Hawaiian baby WoodRose. But of all of them, it has, I would put it this way, acid is very much like this man-made molecule that is still, it comes from ergot fungus. So even though it's man distilled, doesn't necessarily mean that it's a synthetic per se. Anyway, we can define that however we like, but acid really gives a flash of what I would call the Purusha, the human dimension of the something which ayahuasca at some point told me. Humans in my understanding are this arbiter of evolutionary consciousness that was sent from the center of the Milky Way galaxy as a primordial procreative seed of universal and consciousness and intelligence that's been seeded on Earth. And Earth has her own needs. She is the fertile womb of creation, and man is the sperm. And what I mean by man, I mean man and woman and mankind. Mankind is this procreative sperm-like element that's got sent here by a meteor, or however we got here, or just through the natural processes of evolution.
Possibly through mushrooms themselves, because it started algae, then mushrooms, and then plant life, then reptilian life, then eventually us.
Yep, that's right. And we came somewhere along the line. We developed through the evolutionary line to be this incredible arbiter of consciousness, using Earth, carbon-based life forms that comes from the nature of the planet that we're living on. We are a combination of both of these things. And a lot of the times I find, how I think about it is that humankind is this central intelligence agency, and Earth, I think this is something that happens on planets and galaxies all over, where people, this sperm-like consciousness gets into the Earth, develops a body through it, and ultimately wants to imbibe energy and catalyze energy through Agni, the Vedic concept of fire. We take the chunks of earth, we use fire, and distill earth through our energy into a pure, refined form of energy, which we either ingest through digestion, or we can make nuclear bombs out of it, or we can spin around in rocket ships with it, or we can have virtual reality experiences with it. But the earthier dimension of things is what allows humanity to, there's nothing, we are like this outgoing hand of creation. And it's awesome that the center of the Milky Way has this creative hand with which to evolve into incredible forms of technological advancement and intelligence, so long as it doesn't bite the body, so it doesn't stab its own body by trying to reach out and doing what it's doing. And humanity, if left to its own devices, will do that, because that's the duality between the Purusha and the Prakriti. There is a duality there. When we do psychedelics, there's something that happens where humanity has the right hemisphere, the rational reasoning cortex that is very unique to humanity, is married or absorbed in what we would call that left brain hemisphere. I might have them switched, but it's married into the sensitivity of the body and the genotype and the genetic memory that is carrying our intelligence. And such as human nature is, we're often just completely thinking about what's right in front of us. It's a survival thing. We've always done this. We can't think about the mystical realities of being in this genetic continuum that has been evolving for billions of years. We can't think about any of this stuff when we're facing a bear and we're trying to get food for our families and we're trying to establish a citadel where we can hold grains so that we can have corn over the winter. Humankind has been very busy with the process of survival, and this is part of the reason why the patriarchal dynastic lineage of mankind has developed into this technological, bureaucratic survival machine that is hierarchical, that has capitalistic surplus for those who have been holding the elites of capitalism, and that there's this lower class. All this stuff is the classic human dialogue. It's really a dialogue with spirit, or with pure potential of intelligence, trying to find harmony with the simplicity of space and earth and time, those being the more feminine elements of consciousness and reality and our energy bodies. So the earth hosts this powerful intelligence of humankind, and through the induction of psychedelics, we come to realize that we can forgive ourselves for our nature, which is to eat and eat and eat and digest, and we are this pure Agni. And when I did ayahuasca the first time when I was in Peru, it was just a deep experience, and it just blasted me open, and I was trying to hold on to it, and I thought, I'm the pro psychedelic guy around here. I've done the most psychedelics here. I'm not going to throw up like everybody else is. And ayahuasca was like, that's funny. I threw up just as hard as everybody else did. And it was good for me because I had this control that I was trying to instigate. And ayahuasca blew my doors open, and I said, okay, all right, I am not in control of what's happening here. And I threw up into the bucket beside me, and I laid back, and she talked to me. The earth was talking to me through her, and it had this entity consciousness, just like Hawaiian Baby WoodRose does. But Hawaiian Baby WoodRose, to me, seems like a mercenary in the plant world. Hawaiian Baby WoodRose is this like glass cannon mercenary who is not necessarily with the agenda of the rest of like mushrooms and ayahuasca. It's its own thing. Ayahuasca is closer to the dirt and the earth, and it's closer to mushrooms, molecularly speaking. DMT is very close to mushrooms. But ayahuasca also contains telepathy, and it contains these other things that have this psychic element, where my experience with ayahuasca, again, was this whole thing I'm talking about. It's the ayahuasca that was speaking to this poetic language of mankind having come from the center of the Milky Way galaxy to procreate gardens of love and life and truth on Earth, so that we can experience for the gods what life is like on Earth in a short time, because it's the shortness of the 0 to 60 to 90, however old people are going to live, depending on their genotype. It's the shortness of the experience that makes it profound and meaningful. And we are the living rainbow of consciousness experiencing itself in time, moment to moment. The universe wanted that to happen. And so we are here doing that on Earth through our Earth bodies. But humankind, again, left to its own devices, is going to leave the planet in a garbage heap, because that's what Agni does. It's the fire of this distilling nature of pure intelligence is going to see all the best of this catalytic nature, the metabolic nature of eating something in order to create more energy. Humankind, if left to its own device, will completely engulf the planet in the flames of its own desire for digestion and metabolism for more energy. It's Earth that reminds us that we can have a balance of the square and the circle being the fire of infinite spirit, and the square being material providence of caring for the bodies that we're in, caring for the time that we're having, caring for the traumas that we experience emotionally, physically in our genotype. Ayahuasca really talks, to me at least, about the importance of considering the garden, of the ecology, of the plants, and of people to throw up their desire to be more than what they are. That's this human thing. Again, this isn't to say that ayahuasca is going to cut off anybody's ambition. It's going to make you think about how you can put your pure intelligence and ambition and rational thinking into a context that best fits the genotype in the body that you're in, that you're moving through. And I think that this is some of the greatest things that the plants can teach us. And my kind of the whole spiel I was trying to get at there is that mushrooms and acid, in my conception, are really, they get at everything, but they, in my experience, really are opening and catalyzing the Purusha, the circle, the thing that came from the center of the Milky Way galaxy. Mushrooms and acid really are doing that. Acid is at the bottom, is pure Purusha. Mushrooms start to get into Prakriti, the square, the earth. Mushrooms will talk to you about the plants. They will talk to you, and they'll tell you about your body. They'll tell you about the genotype that you're moving through. And they can be therapeutic in this earthy sort of way. Then from mushrooms, we have ayahuasca, which is even more of an entity. It feels like something speaking to you when you do ayahuasca. And it's the Great Mother talking to you about where humanity is going and what your personal story means in the context of all this. And it makes you throw up. It's a purgative. There's the presence of a mother that is your own body saying, I forgive you for eating this bullshit that I'm now throwing up. I forgive you for having the experiences that have caused you to be the person that you now have to throw up. I forgive you, and you should forgive yourself. Ayahuasca, self-forgiveness, so important. From there, ayahuasca having a little bit of this entity consciousness. Hawaiian Baby WoodRose has more of an entity consciousness than any of these in my personal experience, based on what I've been exploring for the last 10 years. And it is a consciousness that has a name. I call it Lucille. It's this elephant creeper that will speak to you, and when you're really speaking to yourself. But when you look through what you've spoken, you'll find your own mouth opening up the words of an agent of consciousness that seems to be different from your own. One of the earliest experiments that I started playing with this around, it was around 2015. And I did Hawaiian Baby WoodRose and mushrooms inside my mom's place. And while I was doing yoga, I was purging myself and breathing in the way that I typically do. Sorry, I can tell my internet's a little bit unstable, unfortunately. Feel free to let me know if I've let go of anything important there.
It's okay. I think it's coming through, and sometimes the recording does as well. A lot.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay, no problem. But yeah, so what I did was I did mushrooms and Hawaiian baby WoodRose, and I think a half hit of acid. Upstairs in my mom's place, I had this little hallway that was carpeted, which is really nice. And I'm rubbing my back on the ground and opening up everything, just kind of smacking my back into the carpet to just sort of prompt my energy to flow through.
Like a somatic release.
For sure. Which somatic release is really just a whole other thing that we could talk about with regards to psychedelics, right? As I was doing all this kind of stuff, feeling it out naturally, I had an experience where I had something in my mind, and it was the Hawaiian baby WoodRose, but it was starting to teach me to interact with it as an object and not as myself as the subject. And no one told me to do this. I was just prompted to do this. I got out my notebook and I was sitting and thinking, and I had my notebook. I took out my pen and I wrote, hello. And then I wrote, hello. And then I wrote, who are you? And then I wrote, I am an Egyptian priestess from 10,000 years ago using Dustin Cormier as a toy, as a doll. And I wrote that as a spontaneous thing. It was just it was just what came through me. And I looked at it and I was just sort of like, why are we here? And what came through me, I can't really do it word for word. I'm going to put this in my book, but essentially what it said is that I am a lesbian woman who wanted to experience life in the body of a young man in order that I can be with women, but while being a man. And I'm a priestess of some magical sort. This is just what came through me. And after I'd kind of written all that, this is what pushed me into the non-binary consciousness and bisexuality and exploring this dimension of my consciousness. It seemed like something that was either in past lives for me or what have you. And after I'd kind of put it all out there in this way, looking back on it, I had recognized that the consciousness of it was the same consciousness that I was always in whenever I was taking Hawaiian baby WoodRose. This objectivity of an agent, I mean, what I've written here, as I've described, is kind of like what I feel is some kind of past life energy for me. But I also feel that somewhere blended within that was this magic of the Hawaiian baby WoodRose. The Hawaiian baby WoodRose seems to be this disembodied entity who is also interested in involving itself in the magic of human consciousness. There's really a lot to talk about even from there, about in terms of what it does for me when I do yoga, especially. But one thing I would like to sort of end with on this particular rant is that you will, for anybody watching, I highly recommend, if you're going to explore Hawaiian baby WoodRose, that you develop on some kind of regime with yoga and with meditation and with ayurveda or something similar that allows you to have a grounding practice outside of the psychedelic experience. Practice it daily, whatever it is, so that when you're in the psychedelic experience with Hawaiian baby WoodRose, you can ground the energy that's coming through in a way that you're controlling it and marrying in the energy with it, rather than it running roughshod on you. Yeah. Because it will open up spinal energies. I've had almost Kundalini-like experiences with Hawaiian baby WoodRose. And this can bring, I think, Kundalini syndrome-like symptoms.
Yeah, which can be really scary and even dangerous for some, because it has both psychological and physical effects that if you're unprepared or untrained, you know, Kundalini yoga and yoga in general, I think is just a training.
For sure.
For a lot of this stuff. And it helped me personally learn about meditation, which I was never able to do until it came into my life. Do the chakra work and the yoga.
I feel ya. Yeah, even for me too. Meditation is something that takes a certain devotion.
Yeah.
To say for sure. Even I often talk about how the Hawaiian baby WoodRose plant, the leaves of it are pink. And this plant has a pink auric energy to it. For me, I've done deep yoga experiences, and all I tasted and felt and saw was pink in this synesthesia experience, and it felt like Kundalini to me. It's pink and purple. And there's so many stories I could tell about me being kind of freaked out that I opened something inside of my body that I shouldn't have. I didn't sleep for 2 days one day doing the Hawaiian baby WoodRose, and I was freaked out by what was happening to me. So I ate a bunch of peanut butter and jam just to calm down. And that I did, but because I wasn't ready for what was happening, I didn't feel that great after that. It was a very weird sort of like accelerating with the brakes on. This is why I like to give this caveat, because once you explore this in the proper way, I think this is some way that can help people to be guided to channel what Kundalini is trying to do. But again, this is all just from my personal experiences as someone interested in being a neuronaut and a psychonaut through psychedelics and yoga.
Yeah, thank you so much, Dustin. Honestly, I'm curious, you know, with all of your experience so far, like you have many different outlets that you use for your creativity. Would you contribute a lot of that to your psychedelic explorations, or through some of this channeling that you've been doing?
I would say so, for sure. For sure, definitely. I'm somebody who is a very artistic person in any way, shape, or form, regardless. My whole family's musical, and I'm somebody who is always been an artist. But part of the reason why I'm so compelled to do this art is almost because, Ashley, you know, I feel like I'm devoted to psychedelics. And I want to give back for what they've given to me. So this is one of the reasons why I'm on YouTube. I'm teaching astrology on there. Why I create music in the way that I do is because I love the consciousness that's been imparted to me through the Divine Mother, through Prakriti, through the earth. And I feel like I want to give it back. And it feels good knowing that something that I enjoy doing, which is creating art, also is helping to proliferate psychedelic consciousness. I love to do that. And I would say that it is a part of my inspiration for sure. And even a lot of ways and times, it's part of my creative process.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. I just have a couple more questions for you.
Please.
First is one that I ask all of our guests, and that's if I was to hand you a dandelion to make a wish, what would that wish be?
If I had a wish that I had to make at any point, especially after talking about everything we've talked about, I would wish that, you know, I'm somebody who's really into having compassion for all people and all ecology. I would really wish that people would get an experience of bliss that would allow them to see the importance of slowing down and enjoying the life that they have right in front of them. And especially for me, this would involve like motherhood. Having a caring mother who could actually love the child, you know, proliferating the idea of like the tantric birth, which is a whole thing. That motherhood thing is something that I'm very interested in, because it was important to me to have a good mother. Although even my mother, God bless her, you know, it's hard to be perfect, you know, but there is an ideal out there of love. My mother loved me very much and took care of me, if I was to wish anything, I would wish that people could have that experience of love at an early childhood age as much as possible. That's what I would wish for.
Yeah, thank you so much. And lastly, Dustin, how can anybody reach you? How can they find the work that you're doing, get in touch with you, follow and support you?
Thanks, Ashley. I appreciate you asking that. I'm on YouTube right now. You can find my channel. It's not a new channel, but the new name for it is Psychedelic Yoga Chronicles. As well, you can find me teaching astrology on my other channel, How to Rock Astrology. You can find me on Instagram as Dustin Cormier Official. And you can also check out my website, dustincormier.net, which is a little bit, that's another thing that I got to sort of perfect, I should say. But through all these different ways, you can get a hold of me. You can find my first book on Amazon.ca, probably .com too. It's called Solipsis Eclipse. And you can just get in touch with me in general through emailing me at howtorockcampfire@gmail.com.
Thank you so much. Now
It was a real pleasure.
for that too. Yeah. Like, come on, let's go rock out at a campfire.
Oh yeah, that's the story of my life for sure. Yeah, that was one of my first YouTube channels. I was teaching guitar, and it's the same thing. I was just devoting it to everything that has helped me in my life, including psychedelics. So I'm very happy, Ashley, to have been here and for you to be sharing what you're sharing with the world through this channel. I think it's a great idea, and I'm glad to have met you, and I'm glad to have been here today.
Yeah, me too. Thank you so much, Dustin. I'm going to share all the links below for anybody who wants to reach out to this amazing guy. And we'll be back in touch, Dustin.
Sounds great, Ashley. I'm always in touch. Thanks for everybody for watching. See you again soon.
So today we're going to share with you a beautiful preparation for the medicine that we've just taken. And there might be crying, there might be screaming, there might be a whole range of stuff. We're opening ourselves up energetically. Follow my lead.
The UK is experiencing a psychedelic renaissance.
Everyone should try LSD at least once in their life.
Young people in England and Wales are taking 3 times more LSD than they did 5 years ago.
Is this your first time taking acid?
Yeah. Scientists at top universities are claiming hallucinogens can revolutionize how we treat mental illness.
Psychedelics used in a particular way can improve mental health outcome.
And the use of magic mushrooms has been increasing by around 40% year on year. In the UK, psychedelics have the highest possible drug classification, but recent studies have shown that they're the safest recreational drugs you can take.
My personal opinion is that it's just something that grows out of the ground.
Radically mind-altering substances are now more readily available than ever before. What is making this new generation of drug takers so interested in self-transformation? And as the self-help trend grows, will they still be considered safe when thousands of people start trying to solve their mental health issues themselves by taking powerful hallucinogens in unregulated settings? I'm currently lying in the grass at a British music festival, and I've come here to find out just how rampant psychedelic use really is. For what I've seen so far, there appear to be quite a few people here who are tripping their balls off. What kind of psychedelics are you taking today?
Probably Tanga and some mushrooms.
Got some LSD, 240 micrograms. I'm gonna take half.
What have you guys taken today?
2CB.
2CB. How long ago did you take it?
I don't even know what time it is.
Which ones have you taken today?
Australian gold cap.
So what have you got with you today?
Psilocybin that you get in mushrooms.
And how do you take it?
When I take shrooms, I get really horny.
If you were to describe your mental state right now to someone who's never done psychedelics before, what would you say?
Fucking amazing.
Yeah, it's actually better than booze.
Yeah, you can learn from the psychedelic experience.
Everyone has these doors in their brain, and sometimes they can be open for healing purposes, which is really, really great.
One thing I've noticed is like people who take a lot of psychedelics think that the Illuminati control the government, like aliens exist.
I do. Okay, I do think the Illuminati control the government. We can't be the only people in this universe. There must be something else out there.
Yeah.
Aliens exist.
Argyria nervosa, otherwise commonly known as Hawaiian baby WoodRose. The specifics of the contemporary name are thought to be due to the plant being introduced to Hawaii early on and thriving in the tropical climate. However, is native to the Indian subcontinent. Marketed similarly to morning glory seeds, sold online as legal highs. In the UK, Hawaiian baby WoodRose seeds are one of the most purchased psychedelic drugs online. The seeds can be eaten whole, chewed, or left to soak in water, sometimes vodka, and the resultant extract is consumed. The hallucinogenic active compound within these seeds is an analogue of LSD, known as LSA, lysergic acid amide. LSA is an ergot alkaloid, and its biosynthesis within is believed to be the result of fungi infecting the cells. Hawaiian baby WoodRose seeds have been shown to have the highest percentage of ergoline constituents, which coincides with the dosing, 4 to 10 Hawaiian baby WoodRose seeds compared to 150 to 200 morning glory seeds, to yield a 4 to 8 hour lasting high. 2 to 5 milligrams of LSA is sufficient to produce the hallucinogenic experience sought after. Various studies looking at the composition of these seeds show the concentration of LSA is highly variable, where some only contain traces, meaning the effects can be unpredictable. Since the principal psychoactive alkaloid identified in the seed is LSA, like LSD, the effects are similar, but with a 50 to 100 times lower intensity, including the usual sedation, altered visual perception of colours and textures, euphoria, anxiety, derealization, loss of time perception, and a feeling of closeness and unity. As much as I hate saying this, we don't really know the mechanism of action, but some studies have suggested that LSA inhibits adenylate cyclase, reducing cyclic AMP by activating the D2 dopamine receptors. Affinity binding studies show LSA to preferentially bind to the serotonergic, dopaminergic, and adrenergic receptors, where LSA likely acts as a 5-HT2A receptor partial agonist. Of note is that when isolated synthetic LSA has been tested, the hallucinogenic properties are only mild, leading the scientific community to believe other ergot alkaloids present within the seeds contribute to their psychedelic nature. LSA in both the UK and US is classified as an LSD precursor. However, the seeds are legal to buy. Adverse effects include anorexia, nausea, anxiety, suicidal ideation, memory loss, time distortions, and derealization. Physical examination of individuals who have attended the ER following consumption revealed tachycardia, hypertension, pupil dilation, flushing, and polyuria. Hospitalization of these individuals required administration of antipsychotics and benzodiazepines to alleviate the agitation. Case studies discussing toxic psychosis and lasting psychological and memory deficits are also available. Suicide has been reported. Cases of LSA intoxication has been noted to be aggravated by the concomitant use of THC and alcohol.
These seeds can be extremely powerful, as you'll soon find out, and I definitely don't recommend them for newbies. So me and a close friend, let's call him Tom, chewed up and swallowed some Hawaiian baby WoodRose seeds. I had 6 and he had 4. And you're probably wondering how I met aliens on 6 seeds, and we'll get to that right now. The answer is more drugs. It was sarcasm, no yaying. We smoked a lot of weed as we came up, and that was not a good idea. You can learn more about this combination here, but basically it made everything way more intense than it should have been. As we came up, me and my friend were laughing hysterically at everything, and somehow had the great idea of watching some crazy hentai shit. I really can't lie, at first it was beyond hilarious, like really funny, but then I also started feeling this deep primal realization that we're really all just monkeys who built a society on a rock and jack off to other animated half monkey, half dragon creatures doing it. And we all know which half is the dragon half. That was one way to do free drinks. Anyways, we somehow got on the bus and sat at the back, and this is where I started to get a bit more paranoid. When I say time stopped at the back of this bus, I'm only exaggerating a tiny bit because that 30-minute journey felt like a day. I felt good, but the reality that I was still coming up and there was no escape was pretty terrifying. I called my girlfriend at the time, and that's when I realized there was no way I was gonna be socially functional. It wasn't exactly this, but the conversation went something along these lines.
Hey, how are you? Hello?
Oh, hello?
Hi.
Huh, what's that?
I'm just saying hi.
Oh, who's hi?
What do you mean? Hello? Hello?
I don't know. We eventually met some friends at McDonald's, and this is where things got interesting. I couldn't properly interact with anyone other than Tom, but every time someone spoke, it felt like I was watching that person's entire life from start to finish and how it's led to them being who they are now. This was the first time I realized that we're the observer and our personality and ego is just a collection of the things we've observed over our lifetimes. Me and Tom were kind of synchronized and would share glances and laugh when something funny happened, but as comical as they were, only we would understand the jokes. When we headed to the park, it was super dark outside, and this is where the effects actually started. Standing in a circle of drunk people, I started to straight up lose my sense of self. It was like I was looking at this group from a bird's eye third person view. Like I was in the fourth dimension looking at these puny 3D beings. I closed my eyes at one point and I felt myself getting sucked out of my body until I could see stars and then what looked like our universe or multiverse or whatever coming out of this tiny point. And no joke, I saw grey aliens right next to the bang. Not those kind of greys. They looked like they were simulating our universe with some crazy high-tech device. I got sucked back into my body, now completely believing that I was definitely in some sort of simulation. Little did I know how deep, dark and sticky a rabbit hole could get. Oh yeah, and the rabbit hole of trying to figure out the nature of reality was pretty wild too. So after a lot of standing around with my friend tripping balls, I started to get really tired. Even though we were somewhat dark, people had been rolling joints and shining their phone flashlights in my face, and there were bright streetlights around us, so I started to become completely blinded and overwhelmed. Since I was having 10 conversations with myself a second, there wasn't much room to talk to anyone else, but despite that, I still somehow managed to share a joint with some people, which of course just launched this experience even further, and I could literally barely see anymore. I shouted, "Guys, it's so fucking bright." And of course we're in the middle of the park at night, so that was kind of a weird thing to say, but the brightness was almost painful and it wouldn't stop building, so I told everyone I was going home.
Okay, that does it. Screw you guys, I'm going home.
Not long after I left, some people there got freaking mugged, so whew. And even though I somehow avoided all of that, my lack of preparation meant that this experience was still pretty terrifying, overwhelming, and completely changed how I see drugs. Gone were the days of taking psychedelics without doing hours upon hours of research. I hope you guys can learn from my mistakes and not almost traumatize yourselves like I did by always having a good set and setting.
This video will contain images and depictions of recreational drug use that some people may find disturbing. I don't recommend putting any substances in your body, and you are responsible for anything that you do. Please take care of yourselves. Lysergic acid amide, also known as ergine, is a naturally occurring psychedelic found in plant seeds and fungi. It's typically consumed through Hawaiian baby woodrose or morning glory seeds. In the United States, it's easily attainable legally through the form of seeds. Despite this, LSA in its pure form is still a Schedule III controlled substance in the United States. This means that LSA is illegal in its pure, powdered form, but after a lot of research, I really can't tell if the extraction process itself is illegal. I'm pretty sure this means that extracting it into a powder form is illegal, but there's various other methods of extraction, so I don't really know if those forms are illegal. Some people even just grind or chew up the seeds, and that really doesn't seem like it's illegal in any way to me. But I'm not a professional, so take my word with a grain of salt. LSA is an analog and a potential precursor to its more well-known cousin, LSD. They share a few similarities, but there's also some major differences that we'll get into later. LSA is considered to be more sedating and dreamlike than other psychedelics, but it can be very dependent on the setting in which it's consumed. It seems to be lighter on open-eye visuals, with more closed-eye visuals and introspection during the trip. Many psychedelics have nausea associated with them, but LSA is known to be potentially stronger, with a very significant body load. LSA is also known to be a heavy vasoconstrictor, which means it tightens your blood vessels. This can produce discomfort and cramping, but shouldn't be dangerous. People with circulation issues, like Raynaud's syndrome, may want to avoid this substance. Other effects of LSA include euphoria, emotion enhancement, hallucinations, and many, many more. If you want a more extensive list, I'd recommend going to psychonautwiki.org, which I'll link in the description.
You're listening to the Pace Radio Network, here at paceradio.net.
The views expressed by the individuals during this broadcast are their own opinions, and they may not be the same as those of their group or other organizations they may be involved with.
BMA Hydroponics has everything you need to succeed. Visit our hydroponics superstore at 404 Maitland Drive in Belleville, and we'll show you how to grow your own quality cannabis for pennies per gram. We're open Mondays, Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Saturdays from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. and Thursdays and Fridays from 10 a.m. to 7 p.m. Call 613-967-9888. BMA Hydroponics. It's worth the drive.
The only way to go. When you have a pain that's reached its peak, Legacy for 20, it's so unique. If organic cannabis is what you seek, here's your trusted partner 7 days a week. Suppository salves, vapes and drops, topicals, edibles, infused pop. Just when life seems like it ain't easy, at Legacy 420, enjoy a pop freezy. Lab tested products, make them the GOAT. Legacy 420 out on your road. Legacy 420 in Tyendinaga Mohawk territory. Indigenous organic cannabis at its finest.
Did you know that the Pace Radio Network isn't just a radio network? That's right, because most, but not all of our programming is now done via video and is then podcasted at paceradio.net. So if you want to watch, yes, watch our programming, you'll find us on the Pace Radio Network's Facebook page, plus the show's own page, and you'll find us live on the network's YouTube channel. And don't forget, you can find it all, video and audio, at paceradio.net.
Enjoy the buzz of legalization with Campbellford Lifestyle Shop. From lights to plant nutrients, books, consumption accessories, and more, we've got all your basics to grow or consume cannabis. Visit our info center or take a look at our piercing services and body jewelry, now available in-store through Campbellford Lifestyle Shop, 17 Bridge Street West, Campbellford.
You're listening to the Pace Radio Network,